Hello, everyone. This is the October 15th, 2024 recap for your daily news on the Ottawa Senators. There were two games over the Thanksgiving weekend, one of which against the Montreal Canadiens and one over the Los Angeles Kings. We're going to talk about both of them, how they pertain to the Sens' future games, and what this means for the rest of the season. So, the Ottawa Senators faced first off over this weekend the Montreal Canadiens, a team that had been riding a pretty big winning streak in the regular season, both combining this and previous seasons. And unfortunately, just as I had predicted online on Twitter, make sure to follow me at ExtraWavy, it'll be in the description down below, it was time for Montreal to get their win over the Ottawa Senators, and they showed off some pretty nice moves in their win. Very particularly, Lane Hudson and Cole Caulfield both looked very good in the 4-1 win over the Ottawa Senators. Linus Ullmark got his first loss of the season, which was unfortunate, but it was going to happen one way or another. And it was truly the defense on the Ottawa side that looked lackluster. Their penalty kill was pretty bad, not to mention, added on to that, the Cleven-Hamonic pairing didn't look too good. This is an experiment early on that Travis Green has attempted, and as of right now, it doesn't look like it's the best pairing. Not that Tyler Cleven or even, to be bold, Travis Hamonic are not NHL caliber, but that pairing is not working out. And while we're still assessing how good Cleven is, I think it's fair to say that Hamonic might deserve a little bit of time in the press box and have Jacob Bernard-Docker come in as the replacement sixth defenseman. As for the second game, well, it's hard not to think of it considering it was yesterday as of the time of filming, but also how crazy it ended up being. Now, the Ottawa Senators faced off against the Los Angeles Kings at a matinee game at the Ottawa Senators Canadian Tire Center. And not only was it a bit weird due to the whole gravy boat situation mentioned in the last episode, but it ended up being quite a spectacle for those who saw it, whether online or in person. Now, for those of you who haven't seen the game, I very much would recommend watching it on YouTube or whatever service you please, whichever one has the highlights, because it was a very entertaining game from a fan standpoint. 8-7 win in overtime for the Ottawa Senators, in a game in which they only ever led in once, 7-6 in the third period. It was a game that goaltending forgot. Both teams had goaltending performances that both teams wish to forget and hope that is just a one-off for their respective goaltenders. For example, the Los Angeles Kings were running Darcy Kuemper, who they acquired in the trade with the Washington Capitals this offseason. He only had an .805 save percentage and let in some pretty outrageous goals, most notably a Zach McEwen slap shot from the blue line on a rolling puck, which while it wasn't necessarily his fault in the sense of he was in position, it was an unexpected shot that he should have saved, considering how far it was, and let's be honest, I don't think anyone really expects Zach McEwen to be the goal scorer in most of the Sens games. Now, that whole game was just a scorer's delight, especially because for the Sens, who used two goaltenders that game, Anton Forsberg had a .667 save percentage, letting in 3 goals early on, and in a disallowed goal, he did get shooken up, and it looks like that is what led to him being swapped with Matt Sogard, along with his relatively poor goaltending play. And while Matt Sogard did do slightly better with a .765 save percentage, he still let in a couple of goals, which, relatively, comparing them to the Darcy Kuemper ones, shouldn't have gone in. Now, I'm not getting too annoyed with the goaltending performances. I'm more so sad with Forsberg's performance over Sogard's, because Sogard was called up as an emergency backup after an injury we'll talk about a little later, and he played a game the previous night, and then had to come in and play in a matinee game in which he wasn't expecting to play. So Sogard wasn't fully prepared for the game, though everyone is still very worried in terms of our backup and our tertiary goaltending positions based on that game, and it's hard not to look at the evidence, see the amount of goals that were let in on the Senators, and really worry what's going to happen if Ullmark isn't in net. Looking back at this win, there are a lot of positives to take out of it as well. As you can see by the note here on the board, plenty of players got their points as well, including Batherson, Norris, Stützle, and Tkachuk. And we had nice performances, bounce-back performances, especially from the previous lackluster offensive game against Montreal. Though the goaltending is definitely the sad note to take out of the game. Not to mention plenty of cool moments in that game, from Chabot's nice patient deke that led to his first goal of the season, Jake Sanderson sniping on the power play. But if there's one player I actually want to highlight in this game, it was the player I mentioned earlier, Zach McEwen. Of all the players to lead the charge for the Sens when they were, in a deficit and struggling against poor goaltending in that game, Zach McEwen got 2 goals, which one of them was that slapper from the blue line that Darcy Kemper probably shouldn't have let in, but the other was a nice play with the fourth line to get another goal in the Sens and help complete their miniature comeback they had in the second period. Now, of course, it's a Sens game, so a game even like that is entertaining enough on its own can't have a little bit of worry to it, because the biggest worry that was collecting the Sens over this whole weekend was the disappearances of Linus Ullmark and Ridley Gregg. Now, as it turns out, the Senators did talk about it in the press and online, and as you can see, we have our first 2 injury markers on the board, though thankfully not the long-term injuries that people were fearing. Linus Ullmark has a strain, according to TSN 1200 and other sources online, while Ridley Gregg's injury is still unknown, though they are both out day to day, and one piece of news that's come out as of recently, on today, Claire Hanna of TSN reported that Adam Gaudette and Mads Søgaard are being sent down to Belleville, which likely means that Ridley Gregg and Linus Ullmark are going to have their spots filled back in as of the next game. The next game being Thursday against the New Jersey Devils at home at 7 p.m. With Ullmark and with Gregg back in the roster, it's hard not to look at the team as better, just straight up. However, with the game that happened recently, it's not incorrect to have those worries defensively that the Senators really struggled with yesterday. And one last note as well about Ullmark. I added a nice little second addendum to his sticky note about his extension, and that is how much will he play. As I said, it's a bit too early to judge Forsberg and Søgaard, especially because that was Forsberg's first proper start of the year, and Søgaard coming in relief after playing a game the previous day. Not to mention it was a matinee game, so he probably had less practice. But Ullmark's success as the starting goaltender is heavily going to determine how good the Sens are, especially because the Sens were the better 5-on-5 team for majority of that 8-7 win over Los Angeles. If they have a better goaltender in that game, that possibly could have been a really, really good win to start the year. 8-2, 8-3, even 8-4, which wouldn't have been a comfortable stat line considering how many goals you'd let in, but still would be a relatively successful game. An 8-7 win looks a lot differently on the score sheet. Now, when it comes to the future of the Sens, Ullmark in net, Gregg on the second line like he was when the season began, and Gregor back to the bottom 6 will round out the roster in a more natural way. As for the New Jersey game, we'll talk more about the lineups and matchups heading into it, especially if Ridley Gregg and Ullmark make it back in. That'll be a pretty significant roster update. But as of right now, plenty of people are simply waiting for the results, and if any people want to talk about the recent matchup, which you can't blame considering how entertaining of a game it was. As of the previous game, even though it was an 8-7 win for the Ottawa Senators, remarkably nothing was checked off the bingo list. I even double and triple checked it to make sure, but no too many men penalties for the Sens, and the only statistic anomaly on there that I might have been able to check off was a 3-assist night from Thomas Chabot, which didn't happen, though there were 2 other players who got 3 assists that night, in Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk. That is all for your Game On, Game Over Ottawa Daily News. Thank you for your time. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and watch not only more of Game Over Ottawa, but other Game Over channels, especially Game Over Network as well. And let's see if the Sens can rebound from a win, as much as that's a crazy statement to say, and put a better face forward against the New Jersey Devils.